So today we have verses number 7, 8, 9, and 10 lined up. I will start with verse number 7. Rajoragatmakam vedhi trishna sanga samudbhavam tanni badhanti kaunteya karma sangena dehinam. So in verse number 6, as we recapped, we had started with Lord Krishna had started explaining the sattva gun. In verse number 7, we are talking of rajas. So the verse translates to know rajas to be of the nature of passion, the source of thirst and attachment. It binds fast, O Kaunteya, the embodied by attachment to action. So let's take this up word by word. Rajaha is rajas. Ragatmakam is of the nature of passion. Vidhi, no. Trishna sang samudbhavam. This is the key. Trishna is Sanskrit for thirst. Sang is attachment. Samudbhavam means source of. So the word Trishna sang samudbhavam becomes source of thirst and attachment. Tat, that. Nibadhanti is binds fast. Kaunteya is Kuntiputra, name for Arjun. Karma sangen. So karma is action, sangen to attach to. So karma sangen becomes by attachment to action. Dehinam is the embodied soul. So the verse translates to know rajas to be of the nature of passion, the source of thirst and attachment. It binds fast, O Kaunteya, the embodied by by attachment to action. So let's chant it together. Rajoragatmakam vedhi trishna samudbhavam tani padhanti kaunteya karma
Karmasangena dehinam.
So we will take some time to understand rajas because this is the mode that most of us are very actively in. Okay. So Lord Krishna is saying that rajas causes desires, that is rag. And rajogun is the source of trishna or thirst and attachment, sang. Now, Trishna is a strong word. It's a very, very strong word in the Hindi and the Sanskrit vocabulary. And it refers not only to thirst, but insatiable thirst. And in the current context, it means the insatiable thirst to possess. So it means a longing, craving, desire, anxiety for something that we do not possess. And sang is, of course, attachment. Now, attachment you can have only towards what you possess, right? So we are talking about trishna for what we don't have and attachment to what we have. So both trishna and sang, or thirst and attachment, disturb our mental equilibrium, disturb our mental state of mind. And see, the nature of the mind is that it's insatiable. It works on likes and dislikes, and it's insatiable as fire. So if you keep feeding the fire will keep consuming, and it's ready to consume more. So similarly, a mind, its thirst for material possession and sensual enjoyment never ends. And the more you give it, the more it wants. So it's all, the mind is all consuming, and it creates a vicious cycle. And what is the cycle? That Rajas, the Rajagun, fuels our desires or thirst. So these creates thoughts that compel us to act so that we can acquire objects. Then it creates sang or attachment to these objects that we have acquired. And this attachment increases our rajas. Because if you look around you, the wealthy people want more wealth. The powerful people want more power. The famous people want more fame. So examples abound around us, and we don't seem to have enough at the level of the mind. We don't have enough of what we have. So that is the nature of the mind, to want more and more. So this constant thirst results in the mind being agitated, because now if you don't have something, you are agitated to get it. You have Trishna, so you work towards getting it. Once you've got it, now you're worried that you remain at the top of the pile. So if you are the most wealthiest man in the world or woman in the world, that is the way it should be. No one should be anywhere near you, you know. So both the Trishna, the thirst, and the attachment, Sang, they make our mind agitated, and this results in stress and strain that we see in most of us. So, Rajogun, or this thirst and attachment, makes us passionate, gross, egocentric, selfish, and we move out into the world. And attachment to objects and beings only results in suffering and sorrow. This we have been doing from chapter 2 onwards, and I thought I'll revise a few things so that this is nothing new, but it always reinforces what we had read. So in chapter 2, the Sankhya Yoga, verses 62 and 63, he had talked about the ladder of fall, okay, where attachment gives rise to desire, which, if it is met, if the desire is met, it is fine, but more desires arise. This is the cycle that we just talked about. If the desire is not met, then we start getting angry. That anger clouds our intellect, leads to delusion, which results in loss of memory. So even if we know some things, we know that we should not be, let's say, telling the truth, or we should not jump the queue, all that knowledge seems to get out of our mind, and we lose our intellect, and which leads to our perishment, actually. Then in chapter 3, the Karma Yoga chapter, verse 25, had actually talked about how the ignorant people behave. They act obsessively with attachment to action and binding themselves to their field of activity. So a sports person to sports, businessman to business, a swami to his ashram. And we are always thinking of my wife, my child, my family, my business, so on and so forth. So we can't think beyond our family and our profession. This is what results in egocentric and selfish desires and aims for personal profits and benefits. So what happens as a result of this? We constantly procure more and more comforts and pleasures, and there are no higher ideals that we entertain or no higher goals. And such a person does not realize that that attachment and the desire are the killers or the cause for that person's perishment. And again, in the same chapter, verse 37 had talked about desire, the calm. It is desire, it is anger, born of the quality of rajas, all devouring, all sinful. Know this to be the enemy. That was in context to Arjun's question that he had asked, you know. So we have actually been talking about all this in the Sankhya Yoga, and chapter 3, 4, we had actually talked in detail about the nature of rajasic desires and what we should do to move ahead. So when we had talked of the technique of right action and the yajnas, we had covered all this. So just recapping some parts of it so that, we realize that it's the same thing being said again, but uh, the point of view is different. There we were talking from the level of the individual. Now we are talking about people in large, and how Brahman, when it functions through our gross matter, it manifests as the different desires, kinds of desires. And also, since we are talking of the simile of the, how the desires are described, that was verse 38 of chapter 3. So Rajasic desires were described as the embodied, indestructible embodied, or the Brahman, is covered like a dust covers mirror. So the image is not clear. We are not able to see Brahman. And to seek it, we have to wipe away the dust. Okay. So you have to take a support of a cloth or a duster or maybe a palm, and you have to clean the surface of the mirror clean. So external factors will not remove the desire. Not We also need to put in self effort. The removal of the dust is the self effort required for the divinity to unfold. And in both these chapters, we had read in detail as to how the desire is the ultimate sin that binds us to constant and feverish activity. So Rajas now dominates our mind from sunrise till sunset. So during the course of the day, making us act with vehemence, So Krishna is cautioning Arjun that passion leads to ceaseless activity, which can be translated to work, to enterprises, and so on and so forth. So as long as we have rajas in us, we will never be free from action. We will never be satisfied and content. So this is how rajas binds us, through action. Let's move on to verse number 8. तमस्त्वाज्ञानजं वेद्धि मोहनं सर्वदेहिनां प्रमादालस्य निद्राभिः तत् निबध्नान्ति भारताः. So the verse translates to, but know tamas to be born of ignorance, the deluder of all embodied. It binds fast through negligence, laziness, and sleep, O Bharat. Let's take this up word by word. Tamas is the tamas gun. Tu but. Agyanajam. Agyan is ignorance, jam is born, so agyanajam becomes born of ignorance. Vidhino, mohanam is which deludes, mohini is which deludes your intellect. So mohanam becomes deluder. Sarv dehinam, so all, sarv is all. Dehinam, the embodied. So the sarv dehinam becomes of all embodied. Then the word appears is pramadalasya nidrabhi. So pramad is when sporting, or when you are negligent of what is actually happening around you. Alasya is laziness, nidra is sleepiness. So pramadalasya nidrabhi becomes through heedlessness, indolence, and sleep. Tat is that, nibadhanti is binds fast, Bharat is a name for Arjun. So that's how Krishna is addressing Arjun. So the verse number 8 translates to, but know tamas to be born of ignorance, the deluder of all embodied. It binds fast to negligence, laziness, and sleep, O Bharataha. So let's chant it together. तमस्तव ज्ञानजं वेधि मोहनं सर्वदेहिनां प्रमादालस्य निद्राभिः Nibadhanti Bharata. So now in this verse, we are covering the last of the three gunas, tamas. So Lord Krishna says that tamas is a result of ignorance, agyan. And tamas or inertia expresses as heedlessness, laziness, sleep. So, or in other words, the tamasic, because of inertia, laziness, and sleep, lives a dull and actionless existence. And then the interesting word is sarvdehinam. So that means tamas is there in all of us. It's not that, we are purely sattvic or we are purely rajasic or we are purely tamasic. Tamas is there in all of us. In all of us, there is some tamas there. So we all need to be very careful. So sarv is all and dehinam is the embodied. So in the best of us, even the most active or the most rajasic and the most serene, the sattvic ones, we have certain proportion of lethargy and inertia. And we must be careful because whenever tamas takes over, when we are not careful, then we start having endless doubts, which take us to darkness, to delusion, and to confusion. And at times, even the most intelligent ones of us, we misunderstand the realities of a situation. Typically, this arises when you are involved with people whom you don't like. Your judgment is clouded towards the people you detest, and you think that that person could never act in your favor. This is just an example I'm giving. So then it's a judgment of our intellect, and so we tend to make mistakes, and of course, we are prone into lethargy and sleep. And for such people, of course, tamas typically manifests in late evening or night. And we will talk about the link of the timing of the day to the three gunas in the following verses. In this particular verse, what is of significance is the word tu, which means but. That means when we talked of rajas and sattva and rajas, it was essentially goodness and okay, desires which you can control. But tamas is in a different category. It's a very peculiar qualification of the embodied soul because it is born out of ignorance or non-apprehension of a higher power or of misapprehension. It is actually the human incapacity of the intellect to understand as to what is right and what is wrong. So, see, animals are largely tamasic because they work in a pre-programmed manner. They don't really understand things. Okay, some of your pet animals may have certain conditioning involved. So they know that when you are coming with a bowl, you're trying to feed and all that. But largely, they don't really understand things. They simply eat, grow, multiply, grow old, and die. And you will notice that some categories also of humans also function in this manner. They really never pause to think. So in tamas, the human's capacity to discriminate between right and wrong is veiled. And the person appears to be functioning in a state of stupor. And the person is really mentally and intellectually dull and gives in to imagination at the drop of a hat. So, you have various kind of illusions that your family is against you, your children are not loving you, children are not supporting them, the society against them, the neighbors. So you have various kind of delusions which tamasic people suffer from. So tamas represents the grossest desires, steeped in ignorance, indolence, and where one is ready to destroy not only another person but also oneself to fulfill one's desires. And to remove these desires, substantial time and effort are required, which is brought out by that same verse number 38 of chapter 3, which describe the tamasic desires as the Brahman or that reality, supreme reality, being covered like the womb covers the embryo, right, uh, in the pregnant mother. So for 9 months you do not see the baby, and 9 months are required for the embryo to
Grow.
birth to the baby, or for the baby to grow. So Atman is not seen completely during that period, or the baby is not seen while the baby is in the womb. So for tamasic desires, time is required to reach that higher state. And apart from time, consistent self-effort is required for the divinity to start shining forth, or to start becoming visible. So tamas binds us strongly to heedlessness and inertia. So this was verse number 8. Let's move on to verse number 9. सत्वं सुखे संजयति रजः कर्मणि भारत ज्ञानमावृत्य तु तमः प्रमादे संजयत युतः. So the verse translates to: Sattva attaches to happiness, Rajas to action, O Bharata, while Tamas indeed, having veiled knowledge, attaches to heedlessness. So let's take this up word by word. Sattva is Sattva, Sukh in happiness, Sanjyati attaches, Rajas is Rajas, Karmani action in action, Bharat is the name for Arjun, Jnanam is knowledge, Avritya, Avritya is covered, having veiled. Tu indeed, or but tamas. Tama is tamas. Pramade in heedlessness. Sanjati attaches. Ut while. So the verse translates to: Sattva attaches to happiness, Rajas to action, O Bharata, while tamas indeed, having veiled knowledge, attaches to heedlessness. So this is what the verse translates to. Let's chant it together. Satvam sukhe sanjati rajah karmani bharata jnanamavritya tu tamha pramade sanjayat yutah. So the same things are now being repeated as if it were an executive summary by Lord Krishna for us. And why this is being done is that these ideas then settle within us completely. So the three gunas are Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva, right? And what they serve as the binding agents to the us, to the embodied in the world. So they act as the binding agents which attaches to the world. Now, sattva, let's take them up one by one. Sattva expresses as inner happiness and keeps the sattvic people occupied in the world seeking peace. So a sattvic person, typically how he functions, he seeks and promotes peace and happiness, not just for himself, herself, but also for people around him or her. So such a person does not rest content till he or she attains that state of supreme bliss. This is how the sattvic person functions. So that happiness is the bind. Rajasic person is totally involved in the affairs of the world, the field of activity, and they act continuously to fulfill their many desires, acting incessantly. They keep adding more desires and leading to still more activity. A tamasic person, on the other hand, has their intellect shrouded. They become heedless. So tamas binds them to a reckless, careless, and indifferent life. In this verse, again, you may notice Lord Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Bharata, right? So we will discuss it in the last verse. So let's move on to the last verse for the day, verse number 10. Rajastammaschaabhibhooya satvam bhavati bharata rajah satvam tamascheva tamasatvam rajastatha. So the verse translates to Sattva arises having prevailed over Rajas and Tamas, O Bharat, and Rajas over Sattva and Tamas, and Tamas even so over Sattva and Rajas. So let's take the verse word by word. Raja is Rajas, Tama is Tamas, Cha, and Abhibhuya becomes having predominated or having surpassed. Sattvam, Sattva, Bhavati arises. Bharat is Arjun, how Krishna is addressing Arjun here. Rajas, Sattvam, so that is Sattva, Tamaha, Tamas, Cha, and Ev even, Tamas, Tama is Tamas, Sattvam is Sattva, Raj is Rajas, Tatha likewise. So broadly, what the verse is saying is that Sattva arises having prevailed over Rajas and Tamas, O Bharat, and Rajas over Sattva and Tamas, and Tamas over Sattva and Rajas. So that is what the how it's being said, right? So let's chant it together. Rajastamaschadbhibhuyah satvam bhavati bharata rajasatvam tamascheva tamasatvam rajastatha. So now again, let's just recap what we have been reading, that Krishna said that all life forms are born of the union of spirit and matter, or Purush and Prakriti. Prakriti is manifesting itself through the three gunas. And these three gunas are the binds which bind the beings to the body. And the three gunas are what? Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And they are the binding agents. Now, interestingly, all of us are a combination of these three gunas. Now, whether it is a sage or a murderer or a businessman or a beggar, we all have these three gunas in different proportions. So the different combination of the gunas account for the different variety of beings that we see around us. But all the three gunas are always present in all of us, unless of course we are the self-realized soul, where we are just we are beyond sattva in that case. So there are two things that we need to look at. One is the broad category of beings. Okay, so in that also we have sattva, rajas, and tamas. So you will have a sattvic person, a rajasic person, and a tamasic person. And also within us as an individual, at times we are sattvic, at times we are rajasic, and at times we are tamasic. So it works as both. It works at both levels. At the level of all beings. So when we categorize beings, and within ourselves. So sattvic qualities are the grade A qualities when our mind or the person is serene and poised. Rajasic are the grade B qualities where we are agitated. And tamasic are like grade C, benumbed. The person works in as if it were he or she is in a stupor. So we have benumbed intellect, or we become dull or inactive, or our knowledge is gone, we become ignorant. So this verse is actually explaining how the three gunas manifest or predominate in different beings and also within one individual. Now, being wise classification as well as within one individual is based on the predominance of one guna over the others. So other two gunas. Okay, so we have sattva, rajas, and tamas. So when we are in a serene or a poised state of mind, sattva is predominating over the rajas and the tamas. So in human beings, how it works is the sattva quality has subdued or quietened the rajas and tamas in us, or sattva is predominating over the rajas and tamas. Rajas and tamasic qualities have become secondary. Agitations have ceased and lethargy removed. So typically when you sit in, immediately after, let's say, prayers, you're completely at peace. Your mind is serene, poised. So the person becomes poised, peaceful, or content, or has a sattvic bent of mind at that point of time, or such category of people. So it applies both to an individual and to a wide set of people. In a rajasic person, the rajas predominates the other two gunas, which is sattva and tamas, making the person restless and incessantly active. And of course, in the tamasic person, the tamas predominates the sattva and rajas, making the person reckless and careless. Now, at this point, we will also take up that how in an individual, the various gunas are aligned to the various times of the day. And this we had done while we were reading the chapter 3 of the Bhagwad Gita. So the law of nature is that each guna manifests at different times of the day. Sattva typically manifests in the early part of the day. That is from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. That is the best time for study and contemplation. That is the Brahma Muhurat, as most of us would be knowing. So that is the time when our sattvic content, whatever is amount of sattva we have, is at its highest. And therefore, they say that you should get up early and sit down for meditation during the Brahma Muhurat. And even for students, actually, you will memorize faster or you will understand your academics better. Rajas, of course, then is during the course of the day when we are out managing our homes, earning a living, working in our offices, looking after a family. So it is there during the course of the day, the rest of the working hours. Tama starts appearing with the sundowners that we have. Okay, so late evening or night. That is the time when our faculties start slowing down. As if our intellect was was shutting down or going to the sleep mode. And that is the time that we go in for sundowners or you go in for cocktails and dinners. The interesting part is that this law is true for all of us. It holds good for each one of us. And if you will notice, this is in accordance with this is how we function during our life actually. So normally you will find the prayers or the havans being organized in the morning half or the morning part of the day. Okay, 4 to 6 may be slightly too much for certain people, but definitely we want to have a havan or a puja at our home before 12, and with lunch it kind of concludes. Of course, we all experience that we are trying to earn a living during the course of the day, and tamas starts setting in the evening or late night when we sit in front of the TV or you resort to those kind of activities. Now, this is what the law of nature is. We also know our own nature, how much rajasic, sattvic, and tamasic we are. So we must understand that we cannot escape a personality. We must learn to deal with it and to channelize it. So according to the timeline, this time frame that one has expressed, we should, plan our activities accordingly. Now, see, what is unfortunately happening is that we have longer tamasic night, longer nights. So we stay up till 1 or 2 or something. So naturally, the tamasic nature has more time to express itself. We cannot get up early in the morning. So the sattvic content naturally over a period of time reduces. And rajas, okay, that more or less remains the same, but for some people who cannot get up even till 1 or 2 in the morning, that also reduces. So we must, as individuals, we must try to align with the law of nature for the expression of the sattva, rajas, and tamas in us. The other point I wanted to highlight was that in the last set of verses, 8, 9, and 10, Lord Krishna has been repeatedly addressing Arjun as Bharata in these 3 verses. Again, I would like to reinforce Bha means light, Rath means one who revels in it. So Bharat means one who sees or seeks and revels in divine light. So Bharat was the original name of our country, implying that a nation that was engaged in the search of knowledge. And when Krishna is referring to Arjuna as Bharat, he is trying to remind Arjun of his great lineage and of this great country, and thus inspiring him to possess the divine light or the knowledge. So with that, we'll conclude today's session.